I have two of my favorite soft light setups in this video. One changed my life and easily scales to home studios, and another for big fashion and beauty shoots using a 12x12 frame. Plus, I'm gonna debunk some myths about soft light. Here is a sneak peek of some of the images before we get started. So before we get to the simple home studio idea, let's look at using a 12x12 frame. First, let me break down the gear. I'm using a 12-foot background instead of your standard 9-foot roll of seamless paper. I'm using two Coupa wind-up stands because a full roll of 12-foot seamless weighs about 50 pounds, not including the 15-pound crossbar. Next, I'm using two medium rollers with extremely wide bases to help prevent tipping. The fabric I'm using in my frame is a 12x12 magic cloth, similar to diffusion used in soft boxes. I also use these heavier duty roller stands because they come with a 4.5-inch grip head, which is ideal for attaching the larger ears that hold the frame in place. If you are only going to use an 8x8 or 6x6 frame, you could use a normal grip head on a lighter duty stand. When using a 12-foot, the weight isn't as big of a concern as the width of the base for more stability and to place more sandbags if needed outside. Next, I'm using a 65-inch umbrella with a silk to get a mix of soft light coming from the umbrella, plus the light hitting the ceiling and bouncing around the room. I'm trying to fill as much of the 12x12 as evenly as possible. You could easily use a white umbrella or a bare head or a large softbox, but I like the spill I get from the 65-inch shoot-through umbrella. For very subtle edge lights, I'm using a V-flat with a bare head inside of it and then covering it up with a piece of full grid cloth. In Hollywood, this would be similar to a book light. I'm scattering the light by aiming it into the V-flat, then by putting up a piece of grid cloth to soften the light even more. These lights are set about 2 stops under my main light. Here, you can see their effects without the main light overhead, then adding the overhead light. With light bouncing all over like this, I would meter dome out. This light is super soft, virtually shadowless, and very even across the set. This is great for e-commerce, fashion, beauty, and giving anyone flawless skin. This is also a great lighting style to sell clients on if you need to replicate the same light for your photo or video. Here, I brought in a Nanlux 2400 bouncing off a 12.5-foot ceiling and then back through the 12x12 magic cloth. To simulate the edge lights, I'd simply put Nanlite 4s or 500s into the V-flats and meter them 2 stops under my main light. But for this sample video shot, I did not use any edge lights. Using a 12x12 gives you beautiful, effortless light without having to move a light around to get different looks. From full-length fashion to beauty, sitting or standing, it just all works. To double check that I'm getting even light, I meter around the set just to double check. Now for the lighting setup that changed my life, and it will change yours too. For this setup, I put 2 bare bowl Profoto D2s into a V-flat and then put a roll of Roscoe full grid cloth over it, creating a giant 4x8 softbox or book light. I now think of this like a giant window. Now this is for all you natural light photographers. Oftentimes, studio photographers think about moving the light around, but natural light photographers thinking about moving around the model or themselves. So first, I built a set using a gravity red strong textured background to the left and a red medium textured background to the right, with the background to the right being set to a slight angle. Then I simply put a black duvetine on the floor. If you were doing this at home, you could simply use a corner of the room as a V-flat and purchase a smaller version of these limited supply hand-painted backdrops. For diffusion, you could also use a bedsheet or a heavily frosted shower curtain. But I personally love the quality of full grid cloth, and it rolls up and stores easily. So I first start with our model a few feet away from the light. Now this is a soft light. Then I move in front of the light and have it wrap around me, and we are really getting some magic with these images. We have great definition in the bone structure, but zero harsh shadows. Then I pull back again and dirty up the frame, exposing the light stands and props. Then I have her move extremely close to the light, giving me this ultra soft light. But because she is so close to the light, the ratio between her and the light hitting the background changes, and the background goes black. But I didn't move the light or change the power. I only moved our model. And this light is super soft, by the way. This is the quote-unquote secret to lighting darker skin. You don't have to overexpose it. It's the way you light it. The way eyes have catch lights, see the way her skin is reflecting? It also has catch lights. Yeah, there's levels to this. But now let's see what happens when I back her away from the light about 9 to 10 feet. The light source is so big that it is still relatively soft, but it does get harder since we moved her away from it. And now with our model in this position, the ratio of light hitting her and the background is the same, and we get a completely different shot. So sometimes the benefit of a big soft source is you can think like a natural light photographer and not worry about moving the light, but moving your model. Look at all the variations we were able to get, from beauty to portraits to fashion, from dark and moody to bright and contrasty. Now, let's nerd out for a minute. I could easily do an entire video on the differences between hard and soft light. Some say it is the size of the light source relative to the size of the subject, while others may say you need to diffuse a light source. Well, both are right, but a combination of a diffused light source that is relatively large to the size of your subject is the magic. So here I'm going to show you with a diffused light source, a Profoto Pro box, which is noted for being very even across the entire box, and it uses plastic and not fabric to diffuse or scatter the light. So it is very soft. Here it is very close, about 4 inches away from our model, and it's about the length of her head. See how soft the light is? The resulting image is butter soft. Now I'm simply going to move it back about 3 to 4 feet. See how hard the light has become? To make your light soft, increase its size relative to your subject, meaning a 4x6 foot softbox 4 feet away from your model is going to be softer than a 2x3 foot softbox at the same distance. And diffuse or scatter the light as much as possible. For instance, a spotlight has very little scatter. So if you have a spotlight 2 feet away from your subject and you move it 8 feet away from your subject, the light is still going to look relatively hard because it is a very direct and not scattered light source. It's going to look much different than this Pro box, which up close is a very soft light source. And even though the light is scattered, once we move it back, the light source becomes relatively smaller to our subject, and therefore it becomes much harder. My name is Ab Sesay. Make sure to check the links below to get links to the backdrops and the diffusion that I like to use. I feel like I always get those questions. And remember to like and subscribe and ring that bell to see more content just like this on Adorama TV. And as you know, there are levels to this.